Hello, and welcome to the House of Purl podcast, episode 3. My name is Allison, and you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Ravelry, Etsy as House of Purl. Today is Monday, February 1st, 2021, and it is overcast here in San Diego, where I live with my husband, 2 dogs, and my little sister, Erin. So the first podcast that I filmed was actually pretty easy for me to film. I just kind of decided I was going to do it, turned it on, hit record, and plowed through. I didn't really overthink it. Episode 2 was much harder, and I'm finding that I'm overthinking it quite a bit, but it's good to keep up practice, and I am looking forward to sharing everything with you this week. It's been a little bit weird this week because our household was hit with COVID, unfortunately. Everyone's safe, everyone's good, but we did have to kind of quarantine from each other. So I got separated from the sewing machine and my sister, so there won't be too much sewing this week. Hopefully next week there will be. On a side note, I did find a video for zippered pouches from Fat Quarters, which are just 18 by 20, I think 18 by 20 pieces of fabric that are pre-cut, and I think it'll be a lot easier than setting out patterns and trying to sew from a pattern. And this will give us more practice with just straight sewing on the machine. So I'm looking forward to hopefully having a couple of those for next week. We'll see. Or 2 weeks from now, because I'm not doing this every week. There's no way I would have enough stuff to do it. So let's talk about what I am most excited for this week, and that is going to be a whole lot of socks. So I am knitting my very first lace, and it is a pair of lace socks. I don't think you can see the lace pattern that well, but lace just means that it's got eyelets and you manipulate the yarn so that it comes together. In my first episode, I talked about how I taught myself to knit and I did it the wrong way. So lace knitting has been pretty difficult for me previously because I wasn't knitting correctly. But now that I am on track, I can happily and successfully knit some lace. I'm very excited about this. These are the monkey socks, which if you're a knitter, I'm sure you've seen. They're actually inspired by falling leaves. So I think it's a really pretty pattern, and it took me a little bit to get used to reading the chart, a lace chart, but once I figured it out, it was pretty easy to memorize. I did rip back several times. I got down to here probably like 2 or 3 times. I did originally, I had this pink that I love pink. Pink is my favorite color. And just, it's too corally for me. I wanted it to be like a lighter, softer pink. So I ended up just nixing that, and I'm doing it in just the gray. Unfortunately, I only have one skein that is 50 grams, and that's not enough for socks for me. So I'm gonna have to buy more yarn. So I had to rip back several times. So I got the hang of this chart pretty well after working all the way down to here. And whenever you have to rip back as a knitter, you get upset about it, but you don't really take a second thought about it because you're doing what you love and you're knitting because you love it, or you want the garment and you want the garment to be right. So you go through what you need to in order to make sure that it's perfect. And there's been a couple times where I was sitting on the couch happily knitting away and I realized that there was a mistake and I would have to rip back like quite a bit, right? And every time my husband or my sister are sitting next to me, they always just look at me in disbelief and go, "Doesn't that annoy you?" Or like, "Aren't you upset?" Like they're always like mind boggled at how freely I just rip stuff back and fix things. And they've been next to me when I've had to like completely rip it out. Yes, sometimes it is heartbreaking and you just want to get it right. You just want to get it done. Making mistakes, tinkering, that's all part of being a knitter. No matter how long you've knit for, you're always going to make a mistake. It's so easy to do. Learning how to fix them and learning how to read your knitting and understanding where you made a mistake and how to fix it, that's going to make you a stronger knitter. So making mistakes, ripping back, That's all part of the process. When you rip back, it's called frogging in the knitting community. So I have made it. This is the length that I'm going to be doing on the cuff. Hopefully when I block it out, it'll open up and you'll get to see the eyelets a little bit more. But I've made it all the way to where I'm going to start working the heel. So I know I have some people on here that watch me because they're friends and family, and I know that they don't knit. So for those of you who don't know how to knit, I'm just going to talk about heel construction really quickly. So when it comes to knitting at the heel, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. The traditional way is to make a heel flap and a gusset. I will show you what that looks like. Please don't judge these socks. This is inside out. There's strings hanging everywhere. It's got this bright blue is not the same yarn as the other ones. I'm learning, okay? I think this was my first pair of socks last year. So if you can tell, right along here, this is the heel flap, and you can sort of see there's seams right along here. And then on the bottom, this is where you turn the heel. And so you go back and forth little by little, getting bigger and bigger. And then once you've got that all knit, let's see if I can get this. You pick up stitches along here and then you knit along, going back and forth, and you just start knitting in the round then. So that is a construction of a heel flap and gusset. There's also a couple other ways you can do it. One of them is an afterthought heel, and that's easy to do on stripes because it's after you're done knitting the sock. So a sock is basically just a knit tube, and you've got the heel that pops out, and then you've got the toe that comes together, and then you've got the cuff at the top to hold it up. An afterthought heel is when you just knit the tube, and then you come in later and you pick up two sides, you literally cut out the yarn in the middle, and then you knit out this heel part. That is an afterthought heel, and that's easy to do on self-striping yarn because that way you won't interrupt the stripe pattern and you know exactly where you're going to place. You're able to place the heel exactly where you want it to go. That is exactly how I did it on these self-striping heels. Also, if you notice, the stripes are completely opposite. The first stripe on this one is pink, the first stripe on this one is green, and it alternates. I think it's cute. It drives my husband insane. So when it comes to self-striping, figuring out that heel and that heel placement is important because it's not really that important, but it's important if you're a perfectionist. And I am currently working on some Halloween socks because you all know I love me some Halloween. And this is some self-striping yarn that I got that is Halloween colors, and I love them. And if you've never seen self-striping yarn all wound up, this is what it looks like. And yes, this is a toilet paper roll in there. So I wanted to make sure, because I love my Halloween self-striping yarn so much, I wanted to make sure that I practiced with different types of heels. I figured out what exactly I like, what fits me the best, and how to do great placement with the heel. So I tried this self-striping yarn, and then I'm also going to try to do a heel flap and gusset. There's different ways that you can knit the heel. I am sort of prototyping all the different types of heels so that when it comes to knitting my Halloween socks, it's the perfect heel. And I will just love to wear them all the time. So continuing on with the Halloween theme, I'm going to pull out a new craft that I've been working on, and that is hand embroidery. So this is, I'll just show you real quick. Here, it's a ghost holding up an umbrella, and it's raining down candy corn. And I am not done with this. It's still a work in progress. I saw this drawing on Pinterest, and I decided I really wanted to embroider it. I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to hand embroidery. I'm just kind of winging it, but it seems to be working. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to take just a white bed sheet and cut out an old one and cut out the ghost, and he's got like a little surprised face, like, because it's raining candy corn. So we'll see how this goes for next week. So when it comes to me embroidering this pattern, I printed it out and I actually just hung it on the sliding door where I knew that there was going to be plenty of light coming through. And then I taped up the fabric over it, and I just went in with a washable outlining pen. I outlined it and then I went through and I stitched it. I just have the inside of the ghost and his little surprised face, some details on it left, and then I'm gonna find a cute little frame for it and it'll be ready to go for Halloween. I'm way ahead of schedule. Actually, I'm behind because I wanted it for last year, but that's okay. My design aesthetic for Halloween is what they refer to as spoopy, and it is kind of like a combination between spooky and cute, like cutesy, so it's spoopy. I don't know if you can tell, but I don't like all the bloody, gory. I watch Hocus Pocus and Halloween Town, and I just like to keep it light and airy, but I love Halloween. Right now I'm going to switch gears and talk about some yarn that I bought and also some future project ideas. This is very special yarn. If you're a knitter, you know this yarn. It's very coveted in the knitting community. This is Spin Cycle Yarns. And this is Tough Love, which is a limited edition, so you can't get it anymore. But let me talk about why this yarn is so special, so expensive. Also, if you'll notice that this one doesn't look like the rest because it got knocked on the floor for 0.5 seconds and my little puppy had it across the room and I just about had a heart attack, but fortunately he didn't do any damage to the yarn, but I freaked out a little bit. This yarn was originally, it was 3 women that started Spin Cycle. So they hand dye the fiber and they hand spin the yarn. So if you look at it, it's got different colors and it is the 2 different fibers. They're called singles and they're plied together to make a double. So you end up with all these different colors playing together. No skein is the same color and you get a beautiful gradient when you knit with it. This yarn is quite expensive. It is, I think, $30 a skein. I happened to be on Instagram and a young woman was destashing some of hers and she was doing it at a discounted rate. So I got to snatch this up 3 for the price of 2, which I was very excited about. But it was still $60, so that's expensive for this much yarn. I am thinking about, I think I want to do a gray sweater with this as color work so that it really makes it pop. And the 2 that I'm thinking about are the Pizzelle by, I think, Camille Decoto or the Laurel by Along Avec Anna. And those 2 are both pullover sweaters and they do have the color work throughout, and I think both of them might have originally had Spin Cycle called for in the design, but I think those would be really pretty ones. I'm not going to be doing that like right away because I just need to work on color work, and this is really nice yarn. I want to make sure that I get it right before I do it. Also, I may have set a goal to get through my yarn before I buy more. I have a ton of yarn right now. It doesn't seem like that much, but it is quite a bit. So I made a deal with my husband that I wasn't going to buy more yarn. However, I do want to knit a ton of sweaters. I have this fun idea that next Christmas my husband and I are going to have Christmas sweaters, and we're each going to have a dog in a Christmas sweater to match us. I would match Sully. He is our scared little frightened boy who is obsessed with me. And then Jacob would match our dog Cyrus, because they're 2 peas in a pod. I don't know though. He will be gone most of the year because of Marine Corps stuff. So it's going to be kind of hard to knit him a sweater when he's not around. He did, however, find one that he really liked. I just don't know how to make it into a dog sweater. Also, if I'm going to be making Christmas sweaters, I kind of want them to be themed like Christmas. So I might just do some not ugly sweaters, but like, really themed fun sweaters. And I just might not tell him, which is probably a bad thing because he watches this podcast. So Sorry, Jacob, but you'll get what I knit. I love you. So that is all of the knitting content that I have for this week. We'll see what I get up to in the next couple weeks. In the home front, I'm currently sitting upstairs and this delicious smell of gumbo is just wafting through the house. Jacob got up and made gumbo and it's just been simmering away all day and I cannot wait to eat it. It's a really, really good recipe. It does take, you do the roux in the morning, but it is so good. I also made a sourdough loaf this week. I hadn't made one in a couple weeks, so I got it together and made it. And I do a combination of whole wheat and bread flour, and it came out beautifully. And we just finished it last night. It was so good. It is officially February, and that means spring is coming, which is crazy. I know I've talked about gardening on here before, but because we live in a rental, it makes it hard. But I think I am going to go ahead and try to do a container garden this year. Just a few things. We have a backyard that gets quite a bit of sun. One area that gets just like absolutely beat down with sun. So I think some things that I'm going to be growing are probably bell peppers, tomatoes. I don't love tomatoes, but I know that they're really good when you grow them yourselves. Also, maybe some squash. I'm not totally sure. There's this really one good patch, but it just gets like bright, hot sunlight. It's too much for succulents. And so we'll see. I might have to like keep a tabs on it, see how it goes. And then we've got another side that does get a little bit more shade. So I have to start planning and figuring out how I want to do that. And then our front porch, we have a nice little front porch. We do live on a busier street, and across from us there is a multi-level apartment complex, and people do tend to hang out in front of it. So our front porch is not necessarily the hangout spot, but it is really seen from the street. So I want to do a couple things to sort of brighten that up, but it does get full shade. So I'm trying to decide what I can do to brighten it up and make the curb appeal much better without much sun. I do have a philodendron and I got it for my birthday last year and it has completely taken off. This thing has taken over and I've propagated it into a couple other ones, but I think probably some of the philodendron out on the front porch would be just really nice because I think it would be happy out there. So we'll see. I got a couple things. I hope that you enjoyed hanging out with me and chatting a little bit. Go and do something that you love and enjoy life. Bye. You see right here?